Oh, that's funny. Awesome. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to WorkTripp Introducing, and welcome back if you're watching this live or if you're listening back on demand. Today we have Anton Chernikov, who is a fabulous architect entrepreneur based down in Devon these days. So, Anton, perhaps you could kick off letting everyone know who you are, what you do, and what gets you excited on a day-to-day basis as well.
Great. Thanks, Sophie. Maybe I'll start with what gets me excited. And that is waking up every morning to not an alarm clock, but the sun kind of streaming through our window downstairs and taking a walk with our dog and just connecting with nature every day and experiencing what it's like to actually transform not just a building or a space, but a whole estate. And it's been a great privilege to have the opportunity to actually make this kind of dream come true, which is to move out to the countryside and take over a venue where not only can we host retreats and events and team buildings, but we all can also live as a community and live as a family. And so, kind of my background is I did study architecture, but then I went into tech and I set up my own design studio and dabbled in many, many different industries. Did some UX product development, did some business development, worked with business schools, worked with fintech companies, and eventually kind of went full circle and had an opportunity to move to Sweden to open a co-living there called K9 Co-living. And that's where I met my wife, and it's also what started me on this real estate journey. And I worked with lots of large developers across Europe on big master planning projects. Eventually came back to my home city, London, and worked with a few developers on big build-to-rent kind of mixed-use housing schemes in kind of central areas. And eventually, when the kind of COVID happened and the lockdown came, that gave me an opportunity to kind of consider actually what can I then launch on my own. And so I leased an office space just above where I lived in East London and turned that into House of Transformation. I also launched an events kind of conference called Rebuild that started online, but then went into lots of kind of in-person gatherings at different eco-villages across Europe. And eventually that led me to creating Enchanted, which is like the UK version of that event. And that was kind of maybe a 5-10 year journey in exploring eco villages and land diversification and trying to find a way to actually create a hub or a takeover an estate in the countryside. And we got an opportunity to do that at the beginning of this year, where we took over an 8-acre estate called Selgars Mill, and we agreed a 2-year lease with an option to buy, and that gave us the window to invest in renovations, but also prove the business case so that we can then secure a loan to be able to buy the estate at the end of next year. And yeah, and it's been amazing. You know, it's so much fun to actually get your hands dirty, live close to nature, do DIY, do repairs, build land art, but also actually cultivate a business model that works for these kind of locations and places. And so our approach was always going to be seasonal, where we co-live during the winter months, and that's basically people that we know and digital nomads and people from the city saying we want to start the year in a more conscious, mindful, slow pace. And so we rent the rooms in the mill and the cottages for at least 2 weeks, if not a month or many months. And that enables us to, yeah, kind of do renovations, to live as a community, to kind of restore our energies as well, and then prepare for the event season where we can build our bell tents, we can double our accommodation, and then host much larger groups throughout the event season that starts in April and ends in October. And we've, since the start of the year, from a standing start, we've managed to host 40 groups across these 8 months since March, April time, and it's been great. We've done a few weddings, we've done wellness retreats, we've done our own community festival called Enchanted, We just finished hosting our first embodied leadership program called Somos, which combines kind of somatic practices, movement, body listening, mindfulness, together with kind of workshops around regenerative leadership and empathic communication and how you build culture within your organizations. And yeah, and of course, then our core business is hosting companies for team building retreats and nature immersions. And so, yeah, great to be here. I'm happy to answer any questions, but the ethos is that we want to move away from boring hotels with like loads of staff and this kind of high-end hospitality. And instead, the first thing I say when people come to Selgars is this isn't a hotel, this is our home. And we're sharing this home with you. So that comes with also a shared responsibility to treat the space as if it was an extension of your home. And we have this kind of ethos of we're not here to serve you, and we're here to share a space and an ethos and a culture with you. And then actually that invites you to create your own experience, look after the space, and then that creates hopefully a really relaxed, open, creative atmosphere for then teams to come together. And alongside that, we also do a number of different experiences and activities, from biodiversity walks and nature walks to sound baths to dance and movement and body listening, to some workshops around empathic communication, and also understanding our own shadows and understanding how to regulate our own nervous system and deal with pressure and stress and within the workplace. But also what we encourage is groups to really create an experience that is genuinely embodied, where you spend as much time outside as possible, and trying to create an environment that you can't create in the office or in the city or over a Zoom call, because we have many of those interactions, but one of the special things about going out into nature is you can create a state of presence, a state of being within your team that is really special and unique, that helps to build trust, psychological safety, but also create this kind of connection with the deeper purpose of what you're doing, that you can take forward in the rest of your year. So yeah, it's been great fun. It's nice that we pretty much booked out the whole of the summer, which has been awesome, and we've learned a lot from just observing how great groups and great facilitators use the space. And so we have a 4-story mill house with 2 floors of accommodation and 2 floors of event space, as well as kind of large kitchen for cooking, and that's a great kind of environment for maybe groups of 20 to 30 to 40 people. But we also have the glamping for larger gatherings and events. And then we renovated the barn, and I can show some photos of that later. And then created lots of different, I guess, gathering spaces across the land, in the woods, in the fields. We created a water temple by cutting out a space in some overgrown bamboo that was planted many years ago. We created several sacred fire circles. I built an enchanted portal that has been used for various events. We also hosted in February for my birthday an Honor the Artist Within kind of retreat, where we created, we used to have 4 or 5 days to do art projects, and we built a giant giraffe for the barn called Cami. And then
I remember you discussing this when I came to visit as well.
Yeah.
Cami had not yet been built, so that's fine.
No. She was in parts in a factory in a CNC machine, and then she got delivered, and then we built her and varnished her, and now she's kind of roams around slowly around the space, moving from corner to corner, which is good fun.
So Anton, thank you so much for the overview, and the journey from March to where are we now, November, is phenomenal. So congratulations on that. I mean, what I wanted to get into a little bit was, now it's very normal that we have pop-up shops and co-working spaces and people co-living arrangements and that kind of thing. But obviously, when you started out and you were in those organizations to begin with, that wasn't the case. And this is a quite timely conversation because, you have the news very publicly that WeWork has gone bankrupt, and everyone's kind of trying to grapple with, you know, what is the new version of this co-working arrangement? So I'm sure there's been much commentary on this, but I would love your take on, you know, how that whole idea of new business models around co-living, co-working has evolved from, say, I don't know, 10 years ago to where we are today. Would be amazing.
Yeah. So my belief is that the co-working model is very inefficient. It serves the need for flexibility, but actually, in terms of providing yield or value per square foot, it ends up actually overcharging organizations and not really delivering as much value as it could. So throughout my work consulting for developers and doing research, both in terms of the future of housing, but also the future of mixed use and commercial real estate and retail real estate, everything is about bringing the cost of space down and also making it as flexible and dynamic as possible. So what people aren't looking for is these generic lobbies and large cafes, and then they pay for like a tiny private cubicle, and then they roam between these communal spaces. What they're actually looking for is really dynamic, flexible, but also beautiful event spaces where you have the key and you have privacy. You're not walking through a lobby, you're getting your own apartment effectively, or your own workshop space that you can control, that you can shape, that you can set up for yourself. And so, and the other missed opportunity is recognizing that we don't have to design office spaces in the classic corporate style of plastic tables, black kind of corporate chairs, glass boxes. That's you can create an office that feels more like a home environment, and therefore that space can be used both for professional daytime use, but also for evening and weekend use. And if you can rent a space for parties and weekends, as well as for daytime use, you're maximizing its potential value. And so the idea of, I think, that just the kind of opportunity of real estate isn't just offering co-working membership. It's actually going even more fractional and actually providing on-demand bookable space by the hour, by the day. And more and more organizations are moving away from fixed offices, but they're also moving away from overpriced memberships where you're always kind of having to fit into weird meeting rooms and you kind of roam around. But it's also, how much value does that really provide? And actually, how high quality are those meetings and those spaces? And so the idea for House of Transformation was simply to not be a co-working space, to actually take an office and actually make it an event space, and then to market it for the hour and to offer complete privacy. And also to take away any reception or staff. So it's a completely automated space, just like an Airbnb. There's a lockbox key. Once people have paid, they get the code, they get a page of instructions, how to use the space, and so on and so on. And then they read it, they get the key, they fob themselves in, they use the space, they tidy up afterwards, they throw out the bins, they lock the door, they leave the key back, off to the next one. And as a result, they're able to get a really aspirational space that would usually cost 2 or 3 times as much, but for a fraction of the price. And then they can book it for a day, they can book it for half a day. The great thing is that the space also has a kitchen and a fridge, just like a home. You can cook your own food, you can bring in a chef, you've got a 3-meter wide projector screen, you can play your own music. The whole thing feels like it's your home, it's your space. It's not just a kind of rebranded WeWork that is overpriced and you actually feels quite soulless. And so, I think that model of space for hire, which can be used for many, many different functions throughout the week, because actually the demand for space is very different between daytime and evening, between weekday and weekend, between half term and term time. And actually having that flexibility creates a resilience, and also enables us to undercut the market and provide more value. But that's the kind of commercial real estate, time space kind of ethos.
Yeah, and if we scroll forward now to 2023 and reflecting back on the groups that you've hosted from teams over this year, Could you share a little bit about the types of teams they are, what type of companies, and
it's a full range, and because we have dynamic pricing, we're able to accommodate for charities and community groups and coaches that maybe can only afford 200, 300 pounds for an evening, all the way through to corporates that are happy to pay 1,000, 1,200 for the day. And you have a full range, creative agencies, you've got law firms, you've got fintech businesses, you have international companies that are flying in and wanting to bring their international team. They stay in London, they go to a conference, but they also want to have some time just for themselves. So it's a full range, but it's what I find really interesting is just how much more profitable and how much more streamlined this model is compared to if we had to run a co-working, because people's the ability to, even £400 a month feels expensive to an individual trying to kind of, when they have choices of cafes and from home and other places. Whereas a company, actually, they're flying people out, they're bringing their whole team. This is a really high expense. People's time is far more valuable than paying £1,000 for an event space. So they want it to be good, they want it to be high quality, because actually the greatest resource is the time and attention of the people that they're bringing together, the travel, the extra potentially facilitation, the catering. So this is a big investment. So it's good to get a space that you don't feel like a sardine can, and it's not kind of, no one can stand, no one can walk around, you can't go outside, you're just stuck in a very, very tight boardroom where you can pretty much just sit and that's about it. And just being able to stand up, go get yourself some water, to kind of be able to move around the space, have breakouts, be able to actually have much more of a dynamic workshop format already as a plus. And then just our space, maybe I share screen in a second, has high ceilings, so there's loads of natural light, loads of plants. It doesn't feel like a traditional office, which a lot of team kind of away days and workshops will want to go with. They don't want the conventional kind of boardroom. They want to do something different. And
for those, if I give my kind of personal experience of walking around, obviously this is pre your big renovation project, but you've got a beautiful stream running through your site. You're about an hour east of where WorkTripp is headquartered over here. And
I was talking about House of Transformation. I mean, Selgars Mill is its own paradise, and that's a whole other. So maybe I could share some screen,
go for it.
Because I think you have to see it to believe it in a kind of way. So your computer,
and very accessible for companies from Bristol, especially, I think Bristol and Exeter.
So entire screen, press share. So if you're in London, you're in luck. There's this wonderful space not far from Liverpool Street, not far from Old Street, with paintings. And this is what I mean by being able to change the mood. You've got the theatre style, you've got the long tables with kind of oak tabletops with live edges, and all sorts of different formats of how you can go upstairs for breakouts as well. And I think a space like this is needed in the city, and that's kind of where we started, where we've got our values on the wall, what our space is about. Treat the space as if it was an extension of your home. And this was House of Transformation. And then the vision was always to find a place in the countryside, and we did. Actually, I can show you this one. So this is the beautiful 4-story mill. We live in this cottage. We also have another cottage and an annex and a wagon and glamping and workshop space. But the big opportunity was to renovate the barn and really create more spaces out in nature that enable for learning and community building and conversations to take place, not just in the buildings, but out on the land. And so we created all sorts of different, so let me show you a photo of the barn in a second. So this is the barn. So did the flooring. This was all a dumping ground. We added the windows, the light. This is the Cammy the giraffe. We put the festoon lighting, the brick walls, the cladding.
I mean,
and we made it really
is
homey.
quite the transformation, Anton. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Remember when you first came, in January, and then we've hosted some great companies already. Do we have some logos? Oh, yeah, it comes a bit later. Fable and Maine, Sanofi, Riverford, UK GBC. And we've got a veg garden where we're going to grow more and more of our food and work with our local chef to provide signature recipes and a full catering package. This is some of the co-living when we were building the Phoenix. And then there's some more photos. Yeah, this is the portal that was built, and these for the weddings, but we could also line up these hay bales in a circle in the other field and create a dance floor. And that's the thing of creating this multifunctional venue. And then there's this is inside in the mill house. We've got these long tables. This can also be a workshop space. And then if I scroll down a bit more, we have these incredible trees, and we've had woodland experts and biodiversity experts come and explain to us what's going on. And so now we can give biodiversity tours and really get people connected with all the different trees and plants and nature that exists on site. And then, yeah, there's some more photos here of the venue. And,
that's awesome. And for anyone listening back to this, we can share the link to this video, but also obviously to your site, and you can have a scroll through and check out all of these awesome photos and videos as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's I wonder if in some of the photos there's a picture of the water temple, because it's a really do I have it here? Let's see, maybe it is here. This was we did lots of dinners outside, which was gorgeous. This was the Enchanted Village Festival, where we set up the circle of hay bales, and this is the water temple, where we had a bamboo bush basically, and then we just carved out the center, and then you walk in and you can sit in meditation or in dialogue, and as well as we created like a sacred fire space, and I think this is really kind of important to offer more than just beds and indoor accommodation, but to really create moments of playfulness and experience outdoors. And we created the sacred fire, and it's been an amazing journey to, I'll stop sharing, to not just focus on the indoor space, but to really create an experience for the outdoor space in terms of how we light. I built some outdoor showers. We created some sculptures outside that kind of create little nodes for treasure hunts and to kind of give a little bit of playfulness to the site, and all of those things.
Well, I mean, all of those things sound absolutely amazing. And one of the questions that we asked, so perhaps you've kind of delved into it a bit there, but we've got 5 minutes left. We've got two questions left. So one is, what are your top tips on creating a great offsite? So obviously you've shared so much there, but if you were to distill that down, for example, into maybe 2 or 3 things, what do you think are the fundamentals to really coming away and feeling like the time was spent well?
I think that the top tip is don't over program. Actually less, more concise content at the beginning of the day, and then time to actually interact with each other, actually bring your own personal experience, case studies into the conversations. Don't just repeat what you would do in the office or through an online course or an online training. The whole point of being in nature is you create a very unique state of being, and you want to really maximize that time by allowing for a lot more interactive time, and also time to just be in silence, to be in nature. And what we try and do is design the programs to allow for a lot of breaks, a lot of in-between time, but also to minimize the amount of slides, the amount of theory and presentations, and allow a lot more time for co-creative workshops, for personal reflection, but also for embodied somatic activities. So bringing in a sound bath, bringing in movement, maybe even dance. It sounds scary to bring dance into a work context, but actually the impact that can have and what you can learn as a group and how you can break some of the boundaries and build trust within a group through movement is really powerful.
Well,
and so those would be the top tips.
And that's fundamentally tied, I think, as well, to we live in this async world. So now when you do anything in a shared mode together, like dancing or singing, we have two other fabulous suppliers on WorkTripp. One does exactly that. She does dance in a work context.
Nice.
Sounds scary. The other does incredible singing, like really incredible background in singing, like very, very high level. And just that process of getting people out their comfort zone is really interesting. So
and doing it together, like I think that there's a really important philosophy, which is it's not just about a great performance that people are like, wow, that's great. It's about singing together, and it's about moving together and doing some hands-on stuff on the land in the veg garden, or building a fire, and even cooking together. And I think it's so important that you don't over design and over program, so that actually you don't allow people to relax, to land, to allow for new thinking to emerge. You just recreate that same kind of high stress, high intensity state that you have usually in your day to day. And the real opportunity of an offsite is to give time, give space, allow for something new to emerge. And one of the recommendations I also make is, and workshops that we also facilitate, is allow for a deep conversation around empathic communication and the quality of the communication and relationships that are formed. It's an opportunity to zoom out and consider less what you're doing and more how and why, and also to lean into the interpersonal dynamics, because you'll never have a better environment to have those challenging, sometimes emotional and triggering conversations. And one of the things we want to do more and more of is offer some workshops or some facilitation around how to communicate more empathically within your organization, how to be more aware of when you're triggered and when you're in a fight, flight, freeze state, and how to also self-regulate and resource and avoid burnout. And this is a great context to transfer some knowledge, to provide some actual experiential learning opportunities, but also to just start that conversation within your team of actually, what is our physiological state when we show up to work? How do we make sure that we regenerate ourselves so that we're able to sustain and enjoy and find meaning in what we're doing rather than burning out? And also, the key ingredient is, how are we communicating? And are we triggering each other? Are we actually creating distrust and disconnection through the way that we're interacting with each other?
Thank you. I love that. So much good stuff in there. I'm going to have to hit stop, but before, if I was to give 1 minute for anyone else who inspires you in this whole world of connecting, that you would like to share with people listening in, so whether it's book, project, person.
Art of Gathering is an amazing book by Priya Parker. I think it's, and obviously Regenerative Leadership by Laura Storm and Giles Hutchins. I think it's so important to not just think about where we gather, but how we gather, how we facilitate, how we hold space, how we make sure that we create presence in the room, and that people feel safe and can bring their whole authentic self to that gathering. And that's where the magic happens. And I think those two books are really great at framing that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anton. We'll send the links, and enjoy the rest of your day out there, and enjoy the sunshine as well.
Great. Thanks, Sophie.
Take care. Bye-bye.